A strong leader and military innovator, Shaka is noted for revolutionizing Bantu warfare through standardized weapons and special tactics. Many enemies would flee at the mere sight of Shaka's troops. With cunning and confidence as his tools, Shaka united all tribes in South Africa against colonial rule.
It's only by the grace of God that any of these people will reach their as-yet unknown destinations alive. Or maybe it's his will that they don't. So, Lieutenant, why are you venturing into those forsaken regions?
What do you know about a man named Shaka?
Does that answer your question, Lieutenant? The Masani tribe, Umulos, Lubis, Unus, the Ungwanis, countless others, the banished of Southeast Africa, fleeing Shaka's spears, going straight into the arms of the white slave traders and the British troops on the borders of the Cape Colony. In a way, Lieutenant, they are the ultimate victims of recent history. If you'll favor my comparison, they are the wandering...
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Alien finds show that the New World was discovered tens of thousands of years earlier than previously believed, and certainly well before the time of the American Indians.
You know, people bringing out information is always good to evaluate the information.
Archaeologists have recently unearthed human remains.
You see what I'm saying? I know some people are stuck in one way thinking. You see what I'm saying? There comes a time where you have to truly investigate what's being said on the opposite side to ensure that what you think you know is really what it is. You know what I'm saying? I call this the year of the doctrine cuts. You see what I'm saying? Foundation is about to get hit out here. People gonna have to rethink or reteach some things that they've been standing on. You know what I mean? Foundations are gonna get hit straight up and down. You know what I mean? Your stuff gonna have to be questioned. Do not come out here. Do not come out here. Do not come out here. Alright? So foundations are going to get hit. I'm just saying it right now. And it's already getting hit. So people are gonna have to address these things.
Walter Neves is a physical anthropologist at Sao Paulo University in Brazil. He has been using a standard and reliable archaeological measure, the shape of the skull, to find out what race she belonged to. He fully expected Luthia to be a Mongoloid, an ancestor of the American Indians. But then he fed the measurements into the computer.
When we started running the computer and seeing the results, it was amazing because we realized that the statistics, the quantitative analysis we were doing was not showing just people to be Mongoloid. In fact, the analysis was showing just people was anything except Mongoloid.
Who then was Luthia? And where did she come from? To find out, the skull was taken to a hospital in Rio de Janeiro to begin the process of reconstructing her face.
I'm just saying it right now, and it's already getting hit. So people are going to have to address these things. You see what I'm saying? Different lessons I said I was going to bring out, and I didn't bring out because it wasn't the time to bring it out, but it's coming out. People are going to be in their feelings, people be mad, but so what? People don't care when they bomb, when they bring out their hands. They don't care. Alright? And that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? We got next. You know what I mean? Most I call many, but only a few is chosen. You know what I'm saying? So, everybody along like a man. You know what I'm saying? Information that's out here being spread all over the place, man. You better study and show thyself approved, man. That's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? Don't be tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine. You know what I'm saying? So, get your tools, go to Amazon, go to Barnes and Noble, buy your books, buy your dictionaries and encyclopedias, whatever, because you're gonna have to get into your studies. All right?
That to me is a Negroid face that has all the features you associate with a Negroid face. The proportions of the face, it doesn't say anything about it being Mongoloid. That to me is a Negroid face that has all the features you associate with a Negroid face. The proportions of the face, it doesn't say anything about it being Mongoloid.
The Zulu Empire, its rise, its fall, and its famous fight against the British. We'll see a small tribe become an empire. We'll see European factions playing out the game of power on South African shores, and we'll see a late post-Napoleonic army, well-drilled and equipped with modern rifles, be beaten by an indigenous population wielding nothing more than spears and hide shields. The Zulus, a tribe perhaps as small as 1,500 people living in an area probably around 10 square miles, into an empire of 250,000 people, ruling over an area roughly the size of New Jersey. So, with that caveat, let's start laying out the background. Who were the Zulu people when this all began? What did life look like for them? How did they subsist? What was their government, their economy, their military? Well, they were a relatively minor tribe within the larger Bantu people, who occupied a region in what would now be the eastern part of South Africa. But Shaka, who will be the central figure in the early part of our story, changed all this.
A strong leader and military innovator, Shaka is noted for revolutionizing Bantu warfare through standardized weapons and special tactics. Many enemies would flee at the mere sight of Shaka's troops. With cunning and confidence as his tools, Shaka united all tribes in South Africa against colonial rule.
He changed the weapons, the tactics, and perhaps most importantly, the philosophy of war in the region. He brought in close-quarters combat, replacing the traditional long throwing spear with a shorter thrusting spear.
So kind. Be a man of wisdom now, a man of mind, a man not blind. Be a man of kindness now, a man so big and strong in mind. Be a man so humble now, a man of man now, let it shine. This is what you are, this is how it has been now. This is what to be, and a kind of man now. This is what to see, with a kind of meaning. This is what to feel, with a kind of feeling. We are growing, growing higher and higher. We are growing, growing higher and higher. We are growing.
Listen, I must admit, I was 14 years old in 1986. Do the math. Woo! Sheesh. You know what I'm saying? But all praise and glory to you. How about Shema Shaki? Our shop still here. Still youthful, still going. All praise. But I was hyped when Shaka Zulu miniseries came out. Man, I watched every last one of them. During that time, being a young black man without a father figure and saw this black man that lacked a father and had a father, didn't want to represent him and things of that nature, man. It was very empowering to see how, you know, he rose to greatness within his people. You see what I'm saying? To do the things that he did. You see what I'm saying? So even during that period, I admired that, you know what I'm saying? But I was still not convinced as being a Hamite African, which I didn't know about Ham at the time. I just was like, wow, that's crazy. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, that intro, that gets anybody hyped, you know what I'm saying? Especially if you got a warlike spirit in you, man. You know what I'm saying? Exodus 15:3, man. So I just want to interject right quick. So we're going to continue. Don't get confused. You know, it's just some, you know, cuts, presenting this case that I have here, man. So enjoy the show.
Replacing the traditional long throwing spear with a shorter thrusting spear that was devastating when used in a melee. He developed a system of envelopment tactics known as the bullhorn formation, which I'll explain in more detail later. And he changed war from a means of settling minor disputes to an activity of slaughter and conquest. So who was Shaka? Shaka was the eldest son of the leader of the Zulu people, but he was considered illegitimate, and so wasn't named the heir to the Zulu kingdom. In fact, his name, Shaka, means intestinal beetle, which was sort of the cover story for his mother's untimely pregnancy. This becomes kinda hilarious when you realize that we in the West often call him Shaka Zulu, and since the word Zulu actually means heaven in the Zulu language, we're basically calling him intestinal beetle heaven. So, enjoy that.
There were ululations all round as the men of the moment, Tova Sithole and Cameron Mudasane, made their grand entrance. Both dressed in traditional regalia to show their Zulu and Setswana roots.
Both dressed in traditional regalia to show their Zulu and Setswana roots.
The Zulu Nation is celebrating 200 years of existence. The Zulu Nation is celebrating 200 years of existence. Founded by King Shaka in 1816, it began as a small tribe of only 1,500 people.
Both dressed in traditional regalia to show their Zulu and Setswana roots. Then the moment guests had been waiting for. There's been a lot of criticism to Sithole and Mudasane tying the knot, but the grooms say they're proud of making history.
I love Tova so much. I'm very excited. I'm glad that I'm married to Tova now. We are both Mr. TC Sithole and Mudasane. It's very exciting. We're making history. I think, as I've mentioned before, it is against this idea that being gay is an African. Being gay is as African as being black. Being gay is as African as being black. Culture, Toba Zulu and Mtswana, and we are rooted in our culture and we're very excited about it.
Sticking to tradition, the groom's families exchange gifts in the traditional umabo. The couple have already slaughtered a cow, introducing themselves to their respective ancestors and asking for blessings. This also...
The Zulu Nation, South Africa's biggest indigenous group, formed in 1816 by one of the bravest leaders of his time, King Shaka, now led by King Goodwill Zwelithini, the only recognized monarch in KwaZulu-Natal.
I don't know much about the Zulu Nation. What we do know is what we're taught in schools and what we actually get from other people. But
a strong leader and military innovator, Shaka is noted for revolutionizing Bantu warfare.
I don't see Bantu. I see Levi, Ashanti, Zulu, Falasa, but I don't see Bantu or Butu nowhere. Interesting.
If someone were to guess as to what event had most greatly impacted sub-Saharan African demography in the past 2,000 years, they'd probably state the slave trade or European colonization. However, long before the Europeans or Middle Easterners or Chinese had visited the continent of Africa, major changes were taking place. The people of sub-Saharan Africa are divided into a few major groups, but the largest of which would definitely be the Bantu peoples, a loose conglomeration of nations stretching from Cameroon to Mozambique.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that, you know, this Afro-Asiatic thing is I'm really just learning about it for real, for real. You see what I'm saying? I don't know all terms and terminologies and stuff, but it's fun to get to learn. You know, so I like to learn. So this Afro-Asiatic thing is speaking of a language. You know what I'm saying? And it goes back to Shemites, Shemitics. You know what I'm saying? But I see they trying to infuse and incorporate all kind of nations and heathens amongst the Hebrew. Okay, so even in the map, it showed a lot of the West Coast, you know what I'm saying, and the Northeast, where, you know, we are believed to came through the transatlantic slave trade, where Israel was located at, going to the West Coast of Africa, Cherries of Africa. I'm back. From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph R. Winslow. I'm going to have to read page 86, paragraph 2. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. Bible prophecy. I wish I spoke about that. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jew Yahudah state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. Okay? All right? I got one more to go right along with that. So these these Israelites fled into Africa. It was just not one tribe. Okay? All right? So it was Judah, Benjamin, Levi, and other tribes. You had Asher there during the time as well. Okay? You know, during the time of Esther, it mentioned that you had Israelites scattered during that period, you know what I'm saying, all the way down into Ethiopia for India. But this was particularly, you had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi that was still dwelling in Jerusalem, right? So here we go. Let's see what happened when they got there. Page 90. The black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes, Bantu, Zulu, well, that wasn't even existed, right? They carried their culture, history, laws, and written records with them. This assured them a constant precedent for the development of higher social organization because of the stability of the black Jewish culture. The Jews were not absorbed into the autochthonous population. I know I said that word wrong, but autochthonous. Let me just. I just can't pronounce it. I'm not going to do all that. In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes, right? In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes. They was infused with us, following our laws, statutes, commandments. The Jews made use of every opportunity. They were industrious and skillful people. And the Jewish Ghanaian states, Ghana states, were found kings, princes, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, historians, language interpreters, mathematicians, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmiths, leather workers, potters, armorers, settlers, blacksmith, agriculture, etc. Okay? Then it goes in to say the black Hebrew kings of Ghana had two titles: Yamanga, Master of Gold, and Ghana, War Chief. Okay? So, with that being said, it shows you that Israel, this one source that we have here, mentioned that we went into Africa in the millions, and there was Israelites already there. I'm about to bring that information there as well. So, shows you that we kept our laws, statute, commandments. There was already a whole Hamite nation down there prior to Israel. Ham in the land of Canaan up there, where I got a little mark there. Promised land, which is our land. You have them down there in further southwest in Arabia, Mesopotamia. Okay, because that was a land given to the children of Ham. The land is called Ham because it was given to the children of Ham. Okay, right? So the Africans, the indigenous people of that land, know who Israel was. So if you people saying this for thought process, right? If you're trying to say Osiris is in the land of Africa, then if we went to lands where we went to lands where no heathens was at, right? No man, where mankind never dwelt. Then in these particular lands that you're saying, like the West Coast or North Africa, whatever the case is, then nobody was living there but Israelites. Nobody was living there but Israelites, right? So who are these people there today? I'm back. Hey, everyone. Okay, so I have a book here I want to introduce you guys to. It's called the Holzman Bible Atlas. Okay, bought this several years back. Page 36, and we're looking at map 16. It says before Abraham, the table of nations. Let's see if I can read that. It says Genesis 10 presents a list of nations descended from the three sons of Noah, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. The tables of nations is unique in the ancient world, and it contains 70 names of ancestral heads of nations and peoples known as Israel. The list proceeds from the less important for the purpose of the writer to the most important. The 14 descendants of Japheth are named first. Japheth's descendants generally are associated with areas north and northwest of Canada, including mainland Greece, Asia Minor, modern Turkey, certain Mediterranean islands, Crete, Cyprus, and Rhodes, and the mountainous areas from Armenia to the Caspian Sea. The list next names 30 descendants of Ham. The Hamites generally are located in North Africa. There you go. So you guys is right when you say the land of Canaan. It's considered North Africa, Tanzania. Let's see what it says here. Hold up. Wait a minute. Maybe I jumped the gun. It says generally are located in North Africa, Egypt, and the Sudan. Oh, so I was wrong. Along the coast of Somalia and the West Arabian coast, and in certain sections of Mesopotamia, Canaan, along with many of the people groups Israel encountered as she emerged the promised land. Amorites, Jebusites, Perizzites, Hephites, Girgashites, and others are listed as Hamites. Okay, so that's what I want to show you. Ham land. The land of Ham without cheese. You see that? We were just reading about the Bantu that was there 3,000 to 5,000 years ago in the land of Ham. See? So you see the Hamite land is listed in green. Wherever you see green, that's where the descendants of Ham was located at. Okay? See? Ham all in Africa. Ham in the land of Canaan up there, where I got a little mark there. Promised land, which is our land. You have them down there in further southwest in Arabia, Mesopotamia area down there, right? You have some of them. You have them in Babylon, right? Then you have them upper Syria area as well up there, right? So there you go, guys. Ham, Africa is the land of Ham. Just want to bring that up right quick, okay? Since we just learned about the Bantus. Okay, so let's continue.
A truly massive grouping that also takes up most of West Africa, and I will admit that I've been guilty of incorrectly lumping them together in the past. However, the Bantu are definitely distinct for a number of reasons, and today we're going to discuss the expansion of the Bantu throughout Africa and the various empires and modern-day nations that have descended from this event.
Kids Health presents How the Body Works with Chloe and the Nerve.
Hey, this is a lesson that I taught this week to my third graders, you know, about skin. Okay, we are in our science book. So, third graders, let's just see what this lesson was about. What is the point?
Fleshlight?
Check.
Root?
Check.
Trail mix?
Check.
Picture of my mommy?
Check. Now, will you tell me where we're going with all this stuff?
We're going under the surface of the skin. Skin, 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 skin. Excuse me.
Well, this is pretty cool. I mean, I see skin all the time. Soft skin, wrinkly skin, light skin.
People of African descent go back hundreds of years in Mexico, but as a group, Afro-Mexicans are largely invisible. A 2015 census is changing that. CCTV's Frank Contreras has insight from Mexico's southern state of Oaxaca.
Among Afro-Mexican communities here on the Pacific coast of Mexico's Oaxaca state, this dance is symbolic. Locals say the devils represent the growing power of African descendants in this part of Latin America. It's a history that's beginning to gain global attention.
The presence of Africa here in Oaxaca state is one of the lesser-known aspects of the vast cultural diversity in this region, one of the most culturally diverse in all of Latin America.
Last year, for the first time, the government conducted an interim census asking Mexicans, based on your culture, history, and traditions, do you consider yourself black, meaning Afro-Mexican or Afro-descendant? And nearly 1.4 million people responded, yes. Afro-Mexican communities exist here in Oaxaca state's Costa Chica region, the neighboring state of Guerrero, and Veracruz state, among others. An Afro-Mexican leader from Pinotepa Nacional says, as a nation, Mexico is much more than just a mixture of Spanish and indigenous people.
We believe that the whole world should know that in the colonial era, Mexico was an entry point for African slaves. Our ancestors were forcibly brought here under slavery. By having no presence in the Mexican Constitution, there is no public policy that protects our rights and necessities. We, as Afro-Mexicans, like many indigenous Mexicans, live in regions of extreme marginalization.
Constitutional recognition would finally give them access to medical services, educational grants, and social security benefits. For now, Afro-Mexicans, whose descendants came from places like Kenya, Congo, and later the Caribbean, still do not enjoy these basic rights. Frank Contreras, CCTV, on the Costa Chica in Mexico's southern state of Oaxaca.
thought about what's under the skin.
What's on top is just the beginning of the skin you're in. The skin actually has 3 layers. There's the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous fat.
I don't know who gave you your elevator operating license, but I would like to have a word with them.
Oh, Chloe, you don't need a license to operate an elevator.
Okay, my stomach's feeling better. Whoa!
The epidermis is like a skin cell factory. New cells are being born at the bottom all the time, and slowly making their way up to the top. It takes the cells about 4 weeks to get all the way up, and by the time they finally make it to the surface, they're dead.
So I'm like a skin cell graveyard?
Precisely. And you're shedding dead skin cells all the time.
Wow, what else is up here?
The epidermis also contains melanin, and it's what makes skin darker or lighter. The epidermis also contains melanin, and it's what makes skin darker or lighter.
The epidermis also contains melanin, and it's what makes skin darker or lighter.
The more melanin a person has, the darker their skin will be. Skin comes in many beautiful colors, like my lovely lavender sheen.
I've heard melanin also helps protect you from the sun.
It sure does, but even melanin can't do it all, and that's why we wear sunscreen, to keep from getting burned.
So, what does melanin have to do with you being an Israelite? Does that determine that you're an Israelite because you have more melanin than somebody else? Or does the Bible tells you that your nationality is based off the seed of thy father? Just asking the question.
The 4th book of Moses, called Numbers, chapter 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tabernacle of the congregation, on the 1st day of the 2nd month, in the 2nd year after they were come out of the land of Egypt, saying, Take ye the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel, after their families, by the house of their fathers, with the number of their names, every male by their polls. From 20 years old and upward, all that are able to go forth to war in Israel. Thou and Aaron shall number them by their armies. And with you there shall be a man of every tribe, every one head of the house of his fathers. And they assembled all the congregation together on the 1st day of the 2nd month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families, by the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names, from 20 years old and upward, by their polls.
We are growing and higher. We are growing and higher. We are growing and higher. Hear the children, hear the children.
Probably in the early 1700s, you look at King Shaga's father, King Shaga himself afterwards.
A nation that prides itself in its roots, in its foundations, in its globalization as a whole. So, in terms of its origins, how far dated back they come from, I can really not be sure. However, they are a very good and a great nation as far as I'm concerned.
Briefly, from what I've learned from history at school, the Zulu tribes moved across Africa and settled in Natal, and like with King Shaka and his he was like the main forebear of the Zulu nation.
Yeah, I know they come from the Nguni tribe, from about Central Africa, and Shaka Zulu became very big.
29-year-old Shaka took over leadership of the Zulu clan after the death of his father Senza Ngakona. He immediately attacked neighboring tribes, annexing them and turning them into his subjects. He would confiscate their land and cattle, in the process turning the Zulu nation into a powerful machinery. He controlled land from the Utugela River to the border with Mozambique. At the age of 41, Shaka was assassinated by his 2 brothers, Dingan and Mhlangane. Dingaan, who took over, reigned for 10 years and was killed after being defeated at the Battle of Blood River, where 3,000 Zulu warriors perished. King Mpande ascended to the throne and ruled for 34 years. During this time, peace and stability prevailed. Problems started again when Mpande's son, King Cetshwayo, took over. He fought the British and won at the Battle of Isandlwana, but was defeated at Ulundi.
After the Zulu people were conquered here in Ulundi, then the colonial government, the British government, tried to fragment the Zulu nation. In fact, they encouraged some of Amakosi not to recognize him as their king, which was an effort actually to destroy, because in fact some of the British imperialists, such as Sepp Bartle Frere, were quite candid about it. They said that Zulu power must be broken once and for all.
England, August 1882, at the end of the Zulu Wars. At a country residence of Her Imperial Majesty Queen Victoria, amidst an unprecedented blaze of publicity and public interest in the Zulu people of Southern Africa, an historic meeting took place between the Queen, her political and military advisors, and the defeated and exiled King of the Zulus. He came with one aim in mind. He wanted his kingdom back.
Your Majesty, His Highness Cetshwayo Kampande Zulu. Ndlovukazi.
Ndlovukazi. Siyawubonga umusa wendlovukazi yabamhlophe. Sifisa ukwakha ubuhlobo obunomphelo.
His Highness thanks Her Imperial Majesty for the kind way he has been received in Great Britain. He hopes he is here, he says, to seal that pact of friendship once and for all.
Your Majesty, the Colonial Office feels that any act of clemency would be a grave miscalculation of the Zulu threat. Ma, gentlemen, we're not merely concerned here today with a dispute over territorial borders or the revendications of a defeated king. We are called upon to defend Africa. It is, I believe, our sovereign duty, Ma, to safeguard the well-being of those of our countrymen who have settled in these distant lands, as well as that of the Kaffir tribes who look to us to bring peace to this land that has for the past 60 years been devastated by one of the most formidable military empires ever created, the Empire of Shaka Zulu. They are represented by his legitimate heir, King Cetshwayo. Professor Bramston.
Shaka Zulu, Your Majesty. Yes, the founder of the greater Zulu nation and the Zulu Empire reigned from 1816 to 1828. Most definitely one of the greatest military geniuses in history. Certainly on the level of a Caesar or an Alexander the Great. Imagine, if you will, the prodigious feat accomplished by this 19th century African Achilles, Shaka Zulu. In less than 12 years, he transformed a handful of idyllic, relatively harmless herdsmen, who were by nature reluctant to engage in any form of warfare, into a Spartan army of over 80,000 highly trained, ruthless warriors, extending his influence over most of Southeast Africa. An empire comparable in extension and might to that of Napoleon, and in treachery to that of Genghis Khan. Your Majesty, gentlemen, the war machine created by Shaka Zulu was so monolithic, it has survived his death by almost half a century. Yes, the crown has now defeated it, but that defeat is purely temporary. It can and will rise again and again if we do not stop it once and for all. And why? Because King Shaka was no ordinary mortal. He was a messiah, a god figure. Like an African Mephistopheles, he gave the Zulus glory in return for their souls. wielding the forces of life and death on an endless battlefield of blood and carnage. Your Majesty.
Ma'am, the threat is real, and the decision before us clear. Therefore, the Colonial Office suggests that we constitute within the Zulu Kingdom a progressive destruction and dislocation of the military and economic system. In so doing, we feel that the Zulu people, deprived of central leadership, will revert to the state of innocuous bliss that they enjoyed before the insane conditioning of Shaka.
I tend to agree with Kimberley. If the Zulus won't bend, break them and be done with it. That's what I say.
I rather think we'll be doing them a favor. A return to the plough should prove to be most therapeutic for these savages. Might even bless them with a hint of civilization.
Have I meant to translate, my lords?
That won't be necessary, sir. We have so little in common, especially our concepts of human respect.
Thank you, your lordships, for your chivalry. Thank you. Tell me, what does Shaka Zulu mean to you?
He was one of those rare men who had the courage to live his ideals and to instill his dreams into the hearts of his countrymen.
That is precisely why we cannot give you back your realm. Shaka Zulu is more alive today than ever. His military strength still prevails. You are the king, but it is his spirit which rules your people. We are a practical woman, your highness. We will not form an alliance with a legend.
But this did not break the nation. It remained resolute and strong.
In fact, they survived all those efforts.
Dinuzulu became the 5th Zulu king after his father, King Cetshwayo, was poisoned and died. The Zulus were experiencing disintegration. The British had divided Zululand into 13 territories.
And that resulted in the civil war, where the Zulu people themselves fought among themselves, Usutu and Mandagazi, which actually suited their plans to destroy that unity which King Shaka had brought about.
King Dinuzulu faced banishment and served time in prison. The following 2 kings, Solomon and Cypriel Bheki Zulu, did not engage in wars, but suffered under white rule and were not recognized as kings. The current monarch, King Goodwill Zwelithini, was installed in 1968. He has been active in reviving the Zulu culture, among them the reed dance, Umkhosi weKwashama, and circumcision.
By reviving those things, I think that those things are in fact going to be pillars that will keep us going perhaps for another 200 years.
To date, it's estimated that there are about 11 million of Zulus in South Africa, mainly living in KwaZulu-Natal.
Wait a minute. If the history says there was only like 1,500 of them,
founded by King Shaka in 1816, it began as a small tribe of only 1,500 people.
The Zulus, a tribe perhaps as small as 1,500 people living in an area of probably around 10 square miles, into an empire of 250,000 people.
during the 1800s, when we so-called Black Americans, Negroes, was over here suffering captivities in the early 1800s. And they came into power around the 1816. But now today they are in the millions. How you say the Israelites? How you say that? No, I don't get it.
All different political parties.
Wait a minute. Is there a Zulu king? Where's the black man in America called the king? There's a Zulu king. Active Zulu king. And you're saying these people are Israelites? But you talk about the Mexicans having their own government and land? I don't get it.
Have accepted that the Zulu king is the monarch for the province and is the king for all that are living in this province. Doesn't matter what color, creed you are, I am your king.
What?
So now, there is a lot of things that I've been experiencing that has been a challenge to me, is to look at social cohesion to all these different groups.
It's a 200-year journey from about 1,500 in 1816 to about 11 million people today.
Even as homage to King Shaka himself, I think we ought to, as the king suggests, celebrate him, celebrate the genius who brought us together as different clans who were independent, who didn't comprise one nation, by bringing them together to build such a great nation.
Central Africa was mostly inhabited by Pygmy peoples, most of southern and East Africa by the Khoisan, and the Nilotes inhabited parts of East Africa as well. The Pygmy people are noteworthy for their extremely small stature when compared to other Africans, with various Pygmy groups still existing in the interior of the Congo, although they no longer retain their original language, instead speaking Bantu languages with a large amount of influence from the pre-Bantu Pygmy languages, and even to this day the average Pygmy is less than 4'10". The Khoisan have inhabited southern Africa for a mind-boggling amount of time, with some estimating that they've been in the Kalahari Desert for well over 100,000 years, and they are genetically and physically very distinct from Bantus and other Africans. The Khoisan still exist on the southern tip of Africa near the Cape of Good Hope, and some language isolates in East Africa have been classified as Khoisan, although their inclusion is dubious and requires further analysis. The Nilotic peoples possibly inhabited the majority of modern Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, although they are still in great abundance in South Sudan and parts of the previous three, and it's been suggested that their language is possibly related to Bantu and other Niger-Congo languages. They're notable for having nearly pitch-black skin, as well as being some of the tallest people in the world. As I've mentioned in previous videos, the average Nilote is over 6'1", giving a stark contrast to the neighboring Pygmy people.
Could these people be the ancient Egyptians?
Now, the Bantu expansion did not entirely eliminate these people from existence. As I've mentioned, they still do exist in pockets and regions in modern Bantu territory, and additionally, it was very common for the incoming Bantus to mix with these various groups during their march southeast, and hence many Bantu may have significant admixture from the previous peoples. For instance, in South Africa, the Xhosa people, I hope I'm saying that right, a Bantu group most closely related to the Zulu, have on average 30% Khoisan admixture, and many from Kenya and Uganda might also have Nilotic admixture, and additionally some might even have Cushitic admixture from the neighboring Horn of Africa. The Bantu established many empires and kingdoms along the way of their expanse, including the Congo Kingdom, the Empire of Great Zimbabwe, and possibly most famously the Zulu Kingdom, one of the last independent African kingdoms to be annexed by a European power.
Hear the children, they are talking to you. Hear the wind blow, it is coming for you. See the grass grow, it whispers his name. See the fire glow, he's out in the flame.
There are currently 20 countries with a Bantu majority in Africa today, with around 300 to 600 individual Bantu ethnic groups and languages throughout these countries, and I'm going to name all of them for you right now in alphabetical order. No, I'm just kidding. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the more noteworthy groups in the continent. And since many of these countries don't have an ethnic or linguistic census, it is a little difficult to determine the exact distribution of people, with the area being one of the most linguistically diverse in the world. Because some languages may be mutually intelligible with each other, they may or may not be considered the same ethnic group. For instance, in Rwanda and Burundi in East Africa, the dominant language is Rwanda-Rundi, spoken by some 20 million people. However, the major groups in both countries are the Hutus and Tutsis, both of which speak a dialect of Rwanda-Rundi, yet are considered two very distinct peoples. Some of the groups with a more concrete identity are the Xhosa and Zulu of South Africa, who number around 8 and 12 million people respectively, along with 10 million Shona people in Zimbabwe and Mozambique. Also, keep in mind that because of the borders of the colonial era, many ethnic groups might be spread across multiple countries, while other groups that were previously at odds with each other might have been boxed into the same territory, leading to a bit of a conundrum for the modern people of these countries. The Swahili coast in East Africa has been greatly influenced by many different outside powers, being the only Bantu region where the dominant religion is Islam. Arab traders had been visiting the Swahili coast for well over 1,000 years, and even ancient Greek and Chinese cartographers were aware of its existence. After the death of Muhammad in the 7th century, many merchants and traders from Arabia, Oman, and the Hadramaut settled in this region, and the resulting trade language became known as Swahili, which is fundamentally a Bantu language, however is occasionally written in the Arabic script, especially in Zanzibar and the Comoros Islands, and has a significant number of loanwords from Arabic, and to a lesser extent Persian. Swahili has since become the lingua franca of East Africa, and although the number of people that can be classified as ethnically Swahili is only a few million, the majority of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda have learned Swahili as a second language, numbering close to 80 million people, making it by far the most extensively spoken Bantu language. It would take around 2,000 years for the Bantu to finally reach the edges of the continent after their great trek through the jungles of the Congo, with many historians estimating that the Bantu people may have reached the southern coast of South Africa a mere 1,500 years ago, although the Cape was generally only inhabited by Khoisan peoples at the time of European contact. However, this was not the end for Bantu expansion, as there are many people with full or partial Bantu ancestry outside of this region of Africa. There is, of course, the huge African diaspora in the Americas, mostly in the United States, the Caribbean, and Brazil, although only around 20% of the Black American genome is of Bantu origin, and similar percentages for the Afro-Caribbean people in English-speaking countries, seeing how most of the slaves brought to North America were from West Africa, not Central Africa. Seeing how most of the slaves brought to North America were from West Africa, not Central Africa.
There is, of course, huge African diaspora in the Americas, mostly in the United States, the Caribbean, and Brazil. Although only around 20% of the Black American genome is of Bantu origin, and similar percentages for the Afro-Caribbean people in English-speaking countries, seeing how most of the slaves brought to North America were from West Africa, not Central Africa.
However, a much higher proportion of Black Brazilians' DNA is of Bantu origin rather than West African, as many of the slaves that were brought to Brazil, which was a Portuguese colony, were from Angola or Mozambique, which were also Portuguese colonies. There are also moderate numbers of Africans descended from Bantu slaves around the Persian Gulf, such as in southern Iran, Iraq, and Oman, who were brought to the region in the 8th century AD by the Abbasid Caliphate from East Africa, as well as a small community in Karnataka and Gujarat in India known as Siddhis. Although they do not speak a Bantu language, virtually the entire population of Madagascar off the coast of Southeast Africa have Bantu DNA from Africans that migrated to the island and mixed with Austronesians from Southeast Asia, as well as Arab, Portuguese, Chinese, and Indian traders to a lesser extent, in the Malagasy language, which is decidedly...
Wow, look at the mixture. Look at the straight stringy hair, the goat's hair, the dog's hair, that the Bantu was mixing with these other nations. That's impossible.
The Austronesian in origin has a large amount of influence from Bantu languages. Additionally, the small island nations of Mauritius, Reunion, and Seychelles in the Indian Ocean also have large mixed-race populations, mostly of Bantu stock, and the Chagosians from the island of Chagos, now known as the British Indian Ocean Territory, are also of partial Bantu origin. Although the largest genetic contribution to the South African Cape Coloreds is of Khoisan stock, a significant amount of their DNA is from Bantu sources.
Wait a minute! These people look like Hispanics, natives, the Bantu, Hispanics and natives is impossible. The Black Gene.
As well as the other mixed race groups in the area. There's also a growing diaspora of more recent immigrants from Bantu countries all around the world, as well as internal migration within the region of Bantu inhabitants, with there being an especially large influx into South Africa from neighboring countries in recent years. Overall, Bantu peoples total over 400 million people, about 40% of the continent of Africa, and 6% of the human species, making up an extremely vast and diverse assortment of people, stretching from many areas of the African continent and many countries. Oh, and fun fact, the highest proportion of albinos in the world is actually among Bantu people.
Do we see albinos? Do we see white people? It's no way. It's impossible. Wait a minute. The Bantu people, the black people, the Negroes, making white children? Wait a minute. It cannot be. Because the Native American Indians and the Spanish and the people over here in South Central America, they are questioned to be Israelites. But they got these damn white children over here from the Bantu. Huh? What you talking about, Negroes?
Fun fact, the highest proportion of albinos in the world is actually among Bantu people located around Lake Victoria in the middle of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, with there being around 150,000 albinos in the region who have more or less formed their own communities due to ostracism caused by local superstition. The Bantu expansion really did completely change the face of Africa as we know it, and without this event, the countries and people of sub-Saharan Africa would have looked very different than they do now. Go ahead and let me know your thoughts on the Bantu expansion and the many Bantu nations and people that inhabit Africa and beyond. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone. It's been Mason, and I'll see you next time.
Here goes a Negro only. See? Those are the Israelites. We're scattered. We planted our seeds in the sands of the sea. Sit your ass down. Hope you enjoyed the video. It's not over. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Bantu, Zulu, all one. Same shit.
It's only by the grace of God that any of these people will reach their as-yet unknown destinations alive. Or maybe it's his will that they don't. So, Lieutenant, why are you venturing into those forsaken regions?
What do you know about a man named Shaka?
Does that answer your question, Lieutenant? The Masani tribe, Umulos, Lubis, Unus, the Ungwanis, countless others, the banished of Southeast Africa, fleeing Shaka's spears, going straight into the arms of the white slave traders and the British troops on the borders of the Cape Colony. In a way, Lieutenant, they are the ultimate victims of recent history. If you'll favour my comparison, they are the wandering Jews of Africa. Fleeing the Pharaoh Shaka, they are the wandering Jews of Africa. Fleeing the Pharaoh Shaka, they are the wandering Jews of Africa. Fleeing the Pharaoh Shaka,
into the Babylonian captivity of slavery.
Chapter 4. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations shall come and say, Come, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. But they shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. For the mouth of the Lord of hosts hath spoken it. For all people will walk every one in the name of his God, and we will walk in the name of the Lord our God forever and ever. In that day, saith the Lord, will I assemble her that halteth, and I will gather her that is driven out, and her that I have afflicted. And I will make her that halted a remnant, and her that was cast far off a strong nation. And the Lord shall reign over them in Mount Zion from henceforth even forever. And thou, O tower of the flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion, unto thee shall it come, even the first dominion. The kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem. Now why dost thou cry out aloud? Is there no king in thee? Is thy counselor perished? For pangs have taken thee as a woman in travail. Be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon.
Into the Babylonian captivity of slavery.
Be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon.
Into the Babylonian captivity of slavery.
Be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon. There shalt thou be delivered. There shalt thou be delivered. There shalt thou be delivered. There the Lord shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies.
Into the Babylonian captivity of slavery.